Let me get my notes up here. We are on our lunch break now, day 3, January 26th. We've got 3 witnesses so far today. I'm sorry, 4 witnesses today. We're on the 4th. And so just a quick update on what was talked about today. We had Sergeant Demento came in and discussed sort of the process for removing officers. Hey, Lou. Removing officers from the scene after an incident such as this and taken to a private room. We talked a lot about this yesterday, so he didn't really provide much by way of testimony that was interesting necessarily. Hey, Larcy, I'm doing well. The only thing that was a little bit weird was, yeah, I got my astronaut. These are my ex-Tiger glasses. But, when after the shooting, when Officer Decruz, at the time, former Officer Decruz, was taken to the police station, for his statements and pictures and things like that, the driver, and I didn't catch exactly who was driving him back to the station, but they decided to stop for a drink. It was kind of like nonchalant. Here a man has been killed and is lying dead on the side of the road, and they're taking the shooter, the officer, and they're like, hey, let's just stop at a gas station for a drink. No, not yet. He is not yet, and he is not. As a matter of fact, I'm fighting him on other issues right now. But let me get to this case here because I got food that's supposed to be ready here soon. The next 2 witnesses were witnesses to the shooting. One of them was across the street at the Cefco, so they showed her video. She had taken video on her cell phone of the shooting, but you couldn't really see anything. You could only hear the shot. I think what the state is trying to do there is, of course, they've got to prove several elements of manslaughter, and one of them, of course, was that the officer shot and killed Michael Dean. And so these videos showed that indeed there was an officer, that the officer was Decruz, and that there was a gunshot, even though neither individual with footage physically saw the gunshot itself, but you could audibly hear the gunshot on the videos that they played for the jury. Veronica Henry, and she was quite a ways away. The Cefco is across the street from a major intersection. It's a 5-lane intersection if you include the turning lane. And she was all the way in the back part, furthest away next to the Cefco building. And she could still hear the yelling of then Officer Decruz yelling for the man to get out of the car. Now, one of the things that's interesting is the videos show, and this might have played into it a little bit. I think this is what the state is trying to prove. When the officer pulled up next to Michael Dean, it's possible, and I think this is the case they're trying to lay out, that Officer Decruz is yelling for him to get out of the vehicle. Get out of the vehicle! Get out of the vehicle! Show me your hands! Those kinds of things. But it appears that Officer Decruz may have parked his cruiser so close to Michael Dean that he couldn't get out, even if he wanted to, because he couldn't open his door, because Officer Decruz had pulled up right next to him. And I think that's one of the things that the state is trying to show is, he was making these arguments or yelling for the suspect to get out of the vehicle, but then he had parked his vehicle so close to the suspect that he was unable to even obey those commands. And then after that, the officer goes around the back and over to the passenger side of the vehicle and begins and continues to make his arguments, which that doesn't make much sense either, because why would you yell for someone to get out of the vehicle? You're on the passenger side. That means that the individual is going to get out of the vehicle on the driver's side, and there's going to be a barrier between you and the suspect. So I think the state is probably trying to lay that kind of foundation, that the officer from the get-go wasn't even issuing coherent commands to the suspect, to Michael Dean. So that's what those two were. There was another video which I didn't quite understand what the point of that was, which was essentially just the closed circuit footage from the Tractor Supply Company, because it didn't show anything. I'm still not sure exactly what they were trying to put there. The witness that's up right now, and by the way, one of the witnesses that filmed the gunshot was just 17 at the time. He was just driving by. He was stopped at the red light and took a very short video, which just happened to include the gunshot. As soon as he heard the gunshot, he called his mother. Again, he's 17 years old. He's like, what do I do? And his parents are like, come home and we'll deal with it when you get here. And then they went and took the video to the police the next day. The latest witness, Todd Kavanaugh, he was at Tractor Supply to get dog food and saw the officer and Michael Dean stop at the intersection and ran over to, because he heard the yelling, ran over to the scene, I guess, to see if he could help in any way. I don't know why he wanted to get himself involved, but it's kind of a good thing that he did based on his testimony, because he provides a lot of information. After the shooting, of course, he came around. He asked if he could help in any way. He saw that Michael Dean was pulled out of the car and that Officer Decruz was, trying to tell a guy he just shot in the head, hey, stay with me, stay with me, and that kind of stuff. And then he went to his car and grabbed a first aid kit and started wrapping Michael Dean's head. Decruz told him, when he asked if there's anything that I could do, Decruz told him just to stand back. He stood back. At one point, another vehicle came up really fast, and there was another black male that got out of the car, like slammed it into park, got out of the car, started running up towards the scene. This witness kind of, in his own words, sort of shoved him aside or pushed him aside. The individual, who was unknown and unnamed, apparently took several pictures and then got in his car and left. So that was a little weird. Who was this person that pulled up? Why did he come in so fast, start running towards the car, take a bunch of pictures, then leave? But the most shocking part of the testimony that came out of Todd Kavanaugh was, so after other officers had arrived, the lieutenant had pulled aside Officer Decruz, and they went to like a little junction box that was near the road, that one of those junction boxes that controls the lights. And at one point, and by the way, this was said outside the presence of the jury, and there's a reason for it. Whenever evidence is presented in a trial, all evidence must be relevant. You cannot introduce irrelevant evidence. And I know there was one point during the direct examination of the witness where there was an objection to relevancy. But at one point, they pulled the jury out because they wanted to discuss with the witness. Yes, always phone the police. They wanted to discuss with the witness a part of his statement that they didn't want him to repeat in court. And the part that they didn't want to repeat in court was that this wasn't the first time. That's the quote, this wasn't the first time. And I looked over at Greg. Greg was there. Proud of Your Freedom. Go subscribe to him on YouTube. But I looked over at Greg and we're like, wait a minute, why? And he asked me, he says, why wouldn't they do that? I says, well, it's probably something that's prejudicial. It might be something that is hearsay. I don't have any idea. And we didn't know until we got to that part of the testimony, because at one point, Decruz, while they're over there after the shooting with the lieutenant and this witness that was there trying to comfort Decruz, he said Decruz actually pulled his gun out of his holster. And the witness said he didn't know why he had pulled the gun out of his holster, whether he was going to shoot himself, he was going to shoot the witness, going to shoot the lieutenant. He didn't know if it was any or all of those or none of those. But he pulled his gun out. But just prior to that, he had said, and I quote, let me pull this up. He said aloud, "My career is fucked. I fucked my family. My life is over." And that's the point where he pulled out. And he also said, "This isn't the first time I've fucked my family." and fucked my career. You may recall or may not that Officer Decruz was involved in another incident prior to this where he had run over a black male, and the individual was severely burned because he didn't move his car. He didn't do anything or make any attempt to remove his car or help the individual that he had just run over. And he ended up getting very severe burns on his body. And I think that's what he was referring to. In the law, even though that statement that, I fucked my career and this isn't the first time is likely relevant, the problem is that its prejudicial effect on the jury probably outweighed the probative value of the evidence. And anytime that you've got evidence that would be more prejudicial, if a jury heard this isn't the first time, then they're more likely to go, instead of listening to the evidence, they're more likely to say, well, he's done it before, he probably did it again. Sorry about that, a phone call was coming in. And you don't want to prejudice the jury based on prior acts. And so it made sense why they took the jury out of the room to discuss this particular aspect of his testimony, because they wanted to make sure, hey, look, you cannot say that this is not the first time that this has happened, because it would be prejudicial, and then none of that testimony would get in. It could be, that could be something on appeal that the defense could use to get, if he's convicted, to maybe get the conviction overturned. But it is relevant. It's just prejudicial, and I think to the average person that's just in there spectating, the jury didn't get to see any of this. They don't know that this isn't the first time, and no evidence will be brought up about the fact that he ran over and severely burned another black man prior to shooting an unarmed black man in the head. And by the way, the individual that he ran over shouldn't have been run over either. So it's starting to get juicy. The state just concluded its direct examination of this witness. We're about to hear, after lunch, we'll hear from the cross-examination of the defense, and they're probably going to try to tear apart his statements about, the fact that Decruz audibly said, I'm fucked, my career's fucked, I fucked over my family, this isn't the first time. But the jury did not hear this is the first time. So that won't be used against him, and it can't be used as there were no objections to this testimony, so there's nothing they can appeal on that issue. And then, like I said, it's, if you want to go and look it up, if you're a legal nerd, it's Rule 403 of the federal rules. I think the Texas rules track along that as well. It's the Texas Rules of Evidence 403, I'm pretty sure. But you can exclude, or evidence needs to be excluded that is relevant, but whose probative value is substantially outweighed by its prejudicial effect on the jury or on the decision maker if it's a bench trial. So that's what's been happening today. It's starting to get a little juicy. We're starting to realize that things aren't going so well for the defense right now. I have a prediction here. I think what's going to end up probably happening, if we get a verdict, it will probably be a guilty verdict, and he'll probably end up with, 2 to 3 years in jail. He'll get likely a slap on the hand as opposed to what anybody else would get. I think the only good news out of this case is that he's no longer an officer, and he's not running over or shooting unarmed black men, or anybody else for that matter. So there you go. There's day 3, part 1. I'll be back this afternoon once the afternoon trial is over with, and give you the update on to what happened with the cross-examination of Mr. Kavanaugh. One more thing. So when Mr. Kavanaugh went to do his statement at the police department, and he talked about when the police officers typed up his statement form and printed it off, it omitted the section about the fact that Decruz had pulled out his gun, and he wasn't sure, what he did with it. Now the lieutenant encouraged him and got him to put his gun back in the holster. But the statement did not include either the statements that Decruz made about my career's fucked, nor the fact that he took his gun out of his holster right after saying that my life is over, and that would tend to indicate that he was likely about to shoot himself in the head or something. We don't know. And he brought this up that, hey, what about this part? And they're like, oh, we're aware of that. That's not important. And so the police department kept relevant information out of a statement that the witness made. And you have to wonder why would they do that? And so he had to go in, I guess when he was contacted by the prosecutors, and he made very clear, hey, look, this isn't my statement. This wasn't my complete statement. They altered it. And then when I brought it up, they said it wasn't important and that they're aware of it and it doesn't change anything. So already we're starting to see that Temple PD, which has a history of this kind of thing, was, I don't know, trying to protect Decruz or what they were trying to do, but that's the testimony. All right, guys, you guys take care, be safe, be free. I'll talk to you this afternoon. No, that's all right. I was just finishing.